UFC Fight Night, Namajunas versus Cortez. It takes place this Saturday in Denver, Colorado, and I am reluctantly going to be going through the entire card, giving my pick and prediction on all the fights. I say reluctantly because, like, this is a very weak card. I understand that the UFC is really focusing their efforts on bolstering pay-per-views, but I think there's a lot of people that are bought into watching it more frequently now, and it's like we at least need to have a stellar main card on every single fight night, which is achievable. With some of these cards, they're having guys on the early prelims who are way too popular to be there. They would be better suited for a spot like this. So anyway, we'll see what we can do here with these picks. I think that some of these fights could be going down in, Bellator or PFL or, just like on the regional scene. This is not the most high-level card, but there are a few sneaky fights, which I'm excited to talk about. But anyway, I think this one's going to be a little bit more brief than breakdowns have been in the past few weeks. Mostly because, again, if I don't have a lot to talk about, I'm not going to drone on. So let's jump right into the first fight between Evan Elder and Darius Flowers. So Evan Elder, understandably so, is coming in at a pretty big favorite. He is 1-2 in the UFC so far, which, and you look at the guys that he's losing to, I mean, it's not the best look. But then you got Darius Flowers, who, let's be honest, I mean, looks like a beast and had moments, I think, in his fights in the UFC so far that have made you think, but it's like a short notice fight against Jake Matthews. I know that in hindsight, Jake Matthews has, I don't know. I guess that, it's Jake Matthews is doing his thing. I was just getting some recent fights he's had confused with someone else. But, anyway, lost to Michael Johnson. But, Michael Johnson is a G. He is, the best fighter. On his best day, he's knocking out Dustin Poirier. On his worst day, he's getting absolutely chinned stiff by Diego Ferreira. This is a tough one to pick. So whenever I'm in a situation where it's it's tricky and I'm not exactly sure, I'm gonna start looking at things like I'm gonna start looking at their stats, or I'm gonna just look at their physical attributes. Factor in their age. I mean, you got two people who aren't very old. Evan Elder is 27 versus 29-year-old Darius Flowers. Evan Elder is fighting out of Killcliff, which I would rate as a far superior gym to Chicago Fight Team or Elite Boxing Academy, right? Killcliff is a very solid stable of guys, especially around that weight class. I mean, I know that Killcliff's got a lot of good welterweights, but, you'd be able to spar from them. And I think for that reason, I mean, you have to give Elder the edge. Like, would I ever lay minus 425 on him? No, because, we could see a performance out of Darius Flowers that we wouldn't expect, but I'm going to go with Evan Elder to win. And, if I'm going to give my thoughts on how I think he wins, I think that if anything, what I've seen out of Darius Flowers is he does look to be very susceptible to somebody who's going to implement a submission-oriented game. And Elder's got a win, by sub, but he's getting it done a lot by knockout. And so I could see him going the distance here, but ultimately I will be going with Evan Elder. Okay, so moving forward on the card, Andre Petrosky versus Josh Fremd. I'll make this one quick. I think that Andre Petrosky, in his last two performances, his stock has fallen off a cliff. His stock has dropped like a meme stock after the cash grab. But I will say, I think that I still rate him a much better fighter than Josh Fremd. I think that what happened in his last fight, what is he going to do? Is he going to start implementing, hip attack defense into his regiment, making sure that when he comes in, he's not getting chinned by someone's hip? That's just like a fluke thing. And I'm not saying fluke is in, I don't think that he was, really in it to beat Jacob Malkoun, but it's just like when you see that as a knockout loss in his last fight, I think that it wasn't like some gruesome chinning. And then, when you're fighting Michel Pereira, who's destroying everybody, laying wake to middleweight since he's moved up from welterweight, and you have like what I've seen him done on his best day, I haven't seen Josh Fremd look like that. I think that Josh Fremd, you're having a kind of a tough go with Jamie Pickett, and it's like you take out Cedricus Dumas. I don't know how valuable that is. And then like the state that we saw him in fighting Tresean Gore, who's kind of a tricky one to understand. How has that win aged? Well, poorly. But I'm going to go with Andre Petroski here to win, and I'm going to take him by decision because I think that this will turn into sort of a grappling affair where I think Fremd is adept enough to not just get like arm triangled or something, but I think that Petroski is going to get top control, which is ultimately going to lead to him getting a victory. So next we have Luana Santos versus Maria Agapova. And I'm sure, if any of you guys watch MMA Guru, he mentioned that there's a lot of talk about Maria Agapova having some serious stuff going on outside of fighting, like gambling debts, drug addiction. Would be crazy if all this stuff is just circulating and it's just like bullshit. Because like I think that this has to be playing into a part of the line. Like Luana Santos, I mean, it's not like the widest line ever, but it's just like I didn't watch her fight with Gina Bishop where she lost a split decision, so I don't know how legit it is, but I haven't seen enough to know. And I think that with Agapova, there was very high expectations, and you beat Sabina Mazo, but you lose to Shannon Dobson, Maria Monroe, and Jillian Robertson. It seems and she's like the last 3 losses that she have are by finish. So she's not making it to the distance, very often. That last time was against Tracy Cortez in 2019. I think that Agapova, I'm going to buy into what I'm hearing, and I'm going to fade her, and I think that Luana Santos is going to get a submission victory here, maybe like a rear naked choke. Okay, so moving on in the card to the next fight, we have an interesting one with Montel Jackson and Damon Blackshear. It's very tempting to go for Damon. It is. But I don't think that we can ignore the physical specs on Montel Jackson. He's just like, and I mean, Damon, like, he's a lanky guy, but Montel has 3 inches on him. I don't really see where Damon is going to be able to outwork Montel Jackson on the feet, and that really only leaves the grappling department. And while he had a very competitive fight with Mario Bautista, what he did show in that fight, which I believe ultimately cost him, was a reluctance to potentially give up a top control position to actually do some damage, which is what the judges are looking for. I think Montel, not going with the nickname, but he's going to be too quick. And I do see Montel Jackson here. Like, I know that sometimes you see these jiu-jitsu guys and you're like, well, you beat him and he's a fantastic grappler, but that guy might not have great takedown acumen. But let it be known that despite the fact that, Montel Jackson does have a few losses in the past where you're just sort of unsure if the ceiling is where you think it is, I do think that at this stage of the game, he has developed. He is in his prime, 32. I'm going with Montel Jackson to win a decision here. I just, and I wouldn't say that by any means is this like, I'd say my confidence level on Montel is probably 70%, but there is a chance, I think, that Damon could out-wrestle him. I don't have to see a finish in either of the fighters' futures. I see that, Damon would maybe be able to get enough control. And, like, you never really know. Do these judges, are they going to give damage or grappling more weight? It's sometimes inconsistent, and you can't factor that in. But using all the information that we have, I am going to be going with Montel Jackson. Okay, moving on, we have Jazz DeVicious versus Fatima Klein. Very interesting stuff. Jazz DeVicious was supposed to be competing against Viviane Araújo, who I think she would have beat, and I think that was a very good matchup for her to be able to move on in the division, and I don't think that this one is. I know that sometimes, and I have, made this mistake the other way, where you see a fighter coming up and, you just think to yourself, like, until I see them proven, I can't really put too much weight, but and I'm saying that, like, she's done what she's supposed to do on the regional scene, right? I mean, she's got 3 finishes, 3 decision wins, 6-0, everything that you want to see. But the way that she's doing it, and sometimes it's like, again, we're just going off of hearsay, but things that I've heard about people talking about, her abilities just from, like, people in the gym talking about it, I think that she's legit. If Erin Blanchfield is saying that she gives her competitive sparring rounds, then I think that I could see her being able, because, like, Jazz DeVicious, she isn't really that vicious on her feet. It's mostly when she's able to work in the grappling, and I'm quite sure that, if Fatima Klein is working with somebody like Erin Blanchfield and she thinks that she's very good, she'll be able to handle it. She's had a lot of very competitive grappling matches. She's only 24, and she was doing very high-level grappling matches even, 4 years ago when she was 20. So I'm going to roll the dice and go with Fatima Klein to win a decision, because I do think Jazz DeVicious is very tough. Okay, moving on the card, we have Joshua Van versus Charles Johnson. I am going to be going with Joshua Van. I think that Charles Johnson is sort of like a ebb and flow guy, and he does impress you from time to time. Like, he's been impressive in his last few, but I think that when you look at who he was fighting, he had the opportunity to be impressive against them. Whereas I think that somebody like Joshua Van, who has shown us, like, vulnerability, guys, we got to remember that he's 22. So he's going to improve drastically in between every single fight, or he should. And from what we've seen, he does show a susceptibility to be getting taken down. However, I think Charles Johnson uses his wrestling the best when he is kind of anti-wrestling or just using it to make you think. I don't really rate him as a very dominant guy on top. But although he is a good grappler, but I think that Van is going to be content with racking up some volume, and I think that Johnson has shown that sometimes he'll wait too much. Van's got a 5-inch reach disadvantage, but he gets in there, he rips the body. I think that this will be a situation where we will see Charles Johnson just going up against somebody who is, too good for him to be able to kind of just eke out a decision, which he tends to do at this point. Joshua Van by decision. Moving on, we have Cody Brundage versus Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. What are you going to say about Cody Brundage, man? He's going to make you look dumb one way or another. We see him out there with Bo Nickel, and people say, whoa, he had like an over-under and kind of like threw Nickel off into the cage. Maybe he's sick, sicker than we thought. And he also went in there and, Rampage Jackson style powerbombed Zach Reese, which I think that after the fact too, Zach Reese gets a first round finish against the Cuban missile Julian Marquez. And you see that, and you know, all these things again, like it feeds into your mind how these wins, do they age well, do they not? And so that one ages well, and you think to yourself, okay, well, Abdul Razak Al-Hassan has just come off a loss. But guys, we're talking about Joe Pyfer here, who I think is super legit. I think that in a weird way, his kryptonite is a guy like Jack Hermanson, who is defensively responsible enough to not get chinned most of the time. I know it's happened to him like on occasion, but most of the time he's going to be comfortable enough to not get chinned. But I would say that, you know, other than that, we have seen Joe Pyfer look incredible. And, you know, he just laid Marc-Andre Barriault to waste. And, you know, before that, he knocks out Claudio Ribeiro in spectacular fashion, loses a split to Buckley. And we got to understand that Buckley, like, he is good. And then you look at, okay, he's losing to Malkoun, he's losing to Williams, sick knockout against Alessio Di Chirico. I think that, especially with the recent stuff that's occurred with Cody Brundage, I could see him going into this fight and just being like maybe a little bit overconfident that Abdul is 38, which is the only aspect of this that is concerning. But I think that Abdul, you know, he's a black belt in judo, even though you might not know that, because he usually gets it done with the strikes. And I do see that him knocking out Cody Brundage. I really do. I think that he catches him with a big shot. I don't think Brundage is smart enough to do like a, you know, Brundage Magomedov type game plan and just wrestle. I think that he's going to exchange with Abdul a little too much, and he's going to eat a gnarly head kick or body kick, which is going to spell out his demise. So Abdul Razak Al-Hassan by KO. I'm going to say in the first round. And then moving on, we got Christian Rodriguez versus Julian Erosa. Look, Juicy J is like been a cool fighter over the years, and his last opponent made a very critical error in just leaving his neck exposed. He rocked Julian, and Julian had the wherewithal, like a vet, to get a guillotine and secure a first-round stoppage. But you're going up against C-Rod, who, like, did he arguably lose his last fight? I think so. Versus Isaac Dulgarian. And has he had some weight misses? All these things can make you dislike him, like from like a personal standpoint, but we need to like take a step back here and think about it from a professional or like an analytical standpoint. I don't really see how Julian Erosa kind of needs to just like finish you, and I don't think he's going to be able to finish C-Rod. I think C-Rod has a good style for winning decisions, and I think that that's what he's going to do. So give me Christian Rodriguez by decision with too much volume, or maybe a late stoppage, but probably decision, too much volume. Erosa just not able to keep up. Even though Erosa is a pretty big guy, I don't really see that playing in too big of a factor here. I think that Christian Rodriguez knows that, you know, he's... This matchup, I would go so far as to say, is very tailor-made for him. Whether he blows it or not, that's on him. But from what I've seen of him, like, he knows how to win. And he might stink it up a bit and make a mockery of the fight and make it boring, but he knows how to win. And there is value in that. And then next on the card, we have Gabriel Bonfim versus Ange Lusa. I think that Bonfim, you know, is going to have like a similar bounce back that his brother had after suffering his first defeat. He might be a little bit more tentative, but like I haven't seen anything out of Ange Lusa. I mean, it was pretty bad look in his last fight versus Brian Battle, where I don't remember if it was an eye poke or if it was a nut shot, but you know, he chose not to continue. Might have been an eye poke. Let me see if I can see it on his Tapology. Yeah, accidental eye poke. And then he was like trying to act like he wanted to fight Battle afterward, and it's just, I don't know. Sometimes these things can unnecessarily lower someone's stock in your mind, but like I think that Bonfim is a very, very high level grappler, and I think that he's not even going to care if I get, because he didn't think he was going to lose that last fight. I know that sounds silly for me to say, but like you could tell when he was fighting Dalby, and let's just be honest here, Dalby is like a very top tier fighter, but he was trying to get the finish, and it's like he didn't finish him and he gave up the fight. But think about that, like there's a world where he just beat him by decision or something if he was more willing to not just run his gas tank to zero for the sake of trying to get a viral finish. I think that he will beat Angelusa, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it done by submission, but Angelusa seems to be like at least able to survive these fights because he has not been finished as of yet. He's only 13 fights, but give me Bonfim by decision, actually. By decision. I think he might be more tentative. Next fight of the card, we have Drew Dober versus Jean Silva. Listen, guys, I was absolutely wrong. And listen, we're talking Jean Silva, who's fighting on back-to-back UFC cards. I know there was a week break, but come on now. That's insane. Absolute monster. He's going up a weight class to face Drew Dober, which, I mean, he did miss weight, so maybe they'll give him a redemption shot to try to make 145, but this might represent an opportunity for a permanent change in divisions. Drew Dober is somebody who's very highly touted, so beating him would certainly afford the next fight. I would think maybe would be somebody like rank 15, 14 if we're going to maintain this upward trajectory. And guys, spoiler alert, I think we will. I think what we saw out of Jean Silva is that, like, yeah, did he maybe not get the finish in his fight on the Contender Series? And I thought that he was going to be reliant on that and not be able to, outpoint Charles Jourdain. But he showed, obviously, in that last fight that he can chin even Charles Jourdain, which to any MMA hardcore is a very impressive feat. But, not only has he shown that he can do that, but he showed in that Contender Series fight. Obviously, the guy who he was fighting was tougher than we imagined if he was able to survive a 3-round fight with him. But taking a flyer on him, guys. I'm going Jean Silva. We've seen far too many times recently somebody going up in weight and looking fantastic. I think that there are skill gaps. I think these lower weight, we've always sort of known this, right? But these guys in these lower weight classes are more skilled. And in these ones where somebody's really big for that weight and then they go up a weight, if that power translates, and Drew Dober is a fan favorite. I love watching a Drew Dober fight, but let's be honest here. I think that he would have been a lot more motivated for that Mike Davis fight. If you get it, you get it. But anyway, in all seriousness, I think that he has been in a lot of wars. He's taken a lot of damage, and he's coming off of a loss versus Moicano. When you look at the people that he has been winning against, and then you think about what you just saw Jean Silva do, and you consider that Drew Dober is now 35, it's still tight, but I'm going to go with Jean Silva by knockout. I really do think that he's going to find the chin. I think this guy's legit. I think that these guys that are fighting out of, he's fighting out of the, where does it say? Yeah, the Fighting Nerds gym, which is ran by Flavio Alvaro and, Kyle Borjalio. He's the same guy. There's a lot of guys coming out of this camp. I'm on board now. I hadn't seen enough before, but I'm on board now. Santiago Ponzinibbio is taking on Muslim Salikhov in the co-main event. I think that, this is a tough one to predict. You got two old guys who typically win by knockout, who things have not been going well for as of late. This is probably a loser leaves town type of a situation. For these reasons, I think that these guys are going to really just try to get the win here. I think that they understand that a win is very important, and they probably don't want to get knocked out again. I think that I could see this actually being a fight where they're kind of worried. Maybe one of them gets in, but I think that this fight will go long, And if it does go long, I actually think that based on the level of competition that I've been seeing, like I know that Kevin Holland, his antics and like he loses in these huge matchups, but like, dude, you can't just because you got knocked out by him, you know. I think that Santiago Ponzinibbio, like in those split decisions, and you look at his performance against Michel Pereira and Jeff Neal, like these are close. And then he loses to Kevin Holland. I know he had to come from behind to knock out Alex Morono, and Alex Morono I don't rate as good anymore. But I still think he's got what it takes to defeat a 40-year-old Muslim Salikhov. So give me Santiago Ponzinibbio, most likely by decision. A little rip of the pen here before, you know, in the, I guess it's only fitting, right? This is the Denver card. So we are now at altitude. We have Rose Namajunas taking on Tracy Cortez. Rose was supposed to be fighting Macy Barber, and Tracy steps up on 2 weeks' notice. That is a big variable. This is at elevation. Rose is used to that. There are a lot of things going her way. She has the experience. She's only 2 years older, despite the fact that like she is kind of in a lot of ways. And I'm not gonna say this comp. Don't take this comp as in how she fights, because it couldn't be less accurate. But in her standing, she's almost like a Max Holloway, you know, or almost like a Brian Ortega, where it's like they've been around for a while and they're very well known, but they're not that old yet. So I know that this is kind of brief. And Tracy Cortez, I mean, let me give her flowers. She is a solid MMA fighter, like all around. But like the thing is she's not really like spectacular anywhere, I don't think. I think that she's, again, well-rounded. Like her striking is good, but I don't see her piecing up Rose. Rose has sneaky good boxing and kicks. You know, like, dude, she knocked out Zhang Weili. So I think that Rose has got this. Like, could Tracy win? Because sometimes, the thing about Rose is sometimes she, like, when she underperforms, she, like, vastly underperforms. When she stunk up the co-main against Carla Esparza, which had to be saved by Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje's performance. That was a real stinker of a fight. But I just don't really... I think that Tracy will want to engage. In her mind, she's probably thinking, I want to try to get Rose maybe out of there bank rounds early so I could see her getting after it. Like, I don't think this will just be a pitter-patter fight. But I do see it going the distance ultimately, and I think that Rose will get... She might only win like a 48-47, but I'm going with Rose. So I know this one's a little bit quicker. If y'all like that, let me know. Because you know, I'm trying to give, you know, detailed analysis here, but you know, obviously want to hear you guys' feedback. So I know, like I was saying, the card is a bit of a stinker, but we do have some solid fights to look forward to, you know, throughout the end of the summer, fall. I know we're still waiting on that Sphere card, but I trust that they're going to put something really dope together for that, the McGregor reschedule. So there will be some hot cards to cover later in the summer. Let's just get through these next few weeks, but like and subscribe if you like the content. See you guys.